Hi, welcome to Room to Grieve podcast. We're your hosts, Karen and Bec. Grab yourself a cuppa, find a comfortable spot, and we'll journey through grief together.
So, hi, welcome to today's episode. I'm Bec.
I'm Karen.
And today we have a guest with us who's Anne-Marie. And Anne-Marie is here to talk about the Seddon Legacy Project that she has set up and her reasons behind that. So welcome, Anne-Marie. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really, really chuffed to have you here. And everything that you sort of stand for is stuff that we're really interested in. Karen and I are really interested in grief education for children and supporting children. And I believe that that's sort of something that is in the space that you're working towards.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you. It's just getting the most the most spread out sort of awareness that I can really, because it's often a subject that people don't want to talk about and they avoid. So I'm going against the tide, really.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us, if you don't mind, a little bit about your background story, sort of, the lead up to what happened and kind of how you felt since then? And I appreciate that it's all very new for you still, so please just, be kind to yourself and take your time with it too.
Yeah. So I have 2 young children. Me and their dad separated in December 2022, and we had a rocky separation leading. I mean, I went into temporary accommodation, and it was very turbulent, should we say, especially for the children as well. We both had new relationships, which was absolutely fine until my ex-partner started to show signs of mental health problems. He'd struggled a lot with his mental health in the past, but he was always able to navigate himself out of it. He was a very smart man. He was very streetwise, very full of common sense and obviously professional knowledge as well. So it kind of took us by surprise that when he was going through these moments of mental health problems, that he wouldn't manage himself out of it. And I'm not really sure why, whether there was other factors that we didn't know about, that he couldn't navigate himself out of these periods. We had sort of 8 months of in and out from hospital. We had social services involved for the safeguarding of the children, and it was just pretty horrific, if I'm quite honest. And then last year, from Christmas time onwards, things just flipped, and everything was back to normal. I'd even messaged him and said, "Look, I'm so glad you're back to your normal self. Like, it's really good for you. It's really good for the boys." And yeah, we thought he was doing really well. I mean, our sort of co-parenting relationship got to such a good place that he was coming round and having dinner with us and my new partner, and we were going out for a family McDonald's every Thursday. Like, it was in a really, really good place. We came to an agreement that obviously, due to his working hours, he would have the children on bank holiday weekends, because he always had bank holidays off, whereas I didn't. And Easter weekend, on the Easter Monday, I'd FaceTimed the children to say, "Oh, you're going to come back to Mummy's house tomorrow," because it was my turn to sort of have them. He was going to drop them off before he went to work on the Tuesday. Anyway, my alarm goes off. I wake up. I'm like, "Oh, it's 7:30. They're not here. That's really strange." But he had a tendency to sleep in all the time, and it used to annoy me. Like, his alarm would go off for hours and hours and hours, and he wouldn't hear it, and he wouldn't take it off. So I thought, maybe he's overslept. So my friend, as I was driving out of my close, my friend came down the other way, because we were going out with the children that day, and she was like, "Where are you going?" And I was like, "Oh, the boys haven't turned up, so I'm just going to go and check that everything's okay. They probably just overslept," because from the distance from my house to his was literally like 3 minutes. And I'd arrived, his car was in the drive, everything seemed pretty normal. I knocked to the door, and my eldest was like, "Mummy, is that you?" Because I'd shouted through the letterbox, I'd been ringing the doorbell. And I was like, yeah. I was like, "Is everything okay?" And he was like, "I just can't find Daddy anywhere." And I was like, "Right, okay, well," I was like, "Are you able to pass me Daddy's keys through the letterbox?" And he went, "Yeah." So he'd done that, let myself in, and he was like, "I've looked everywhere, I've looked upstairs." So I said, "Okay, well, hang on a minute, I'll go and look." So I went upstairs. The bedrooms were obviously empty. There was 3 bedrooms. The bedrooms were empty. I checked all the bathrooms, because in previous mental health episodes, he'd been in the bathroom pretty much, or downstairs in the living room. So he was nowhere to be found. And he vaped. So I was like, "Oh, maybe Daddy's in the garden having a vape," because that's what he used to do. And obviously I didn't really expect anything like this to have happened. But we had these in our old house. We had these French doors out to the garden, and they had like a little voile panel, sort of. Is that how you pronounce it? Voile? I don't know. Pulled it back, and then my eldest is like, "There's Daddy," and obviously, unfortunately, I could already tell that he'd passed away. I obviously phoned an ambulance straight away. I shouted for my friend. I was like, "Get the kids out of here." I just went into a bit of a fight mode, I think, and just obviously did what I naturally thought I should do. So I rang ambulance, rang police, and then the next thing I know, I'm trying to get in the garden. I'm trying to get in there. For some reason, the universe didn't allow me to get in the garden. I think it was probably a sign, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
That's what I see it as now, obviously.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I remember was just the paramedics touching me on the shoulder saying, "I'm really sorry." And it was just awful, to be quite honest. And then I had literally half an hour in the back of an ambulance, and then I had to go and tell the children. The police woman and the paramedic said, "It's time now." So I had to go into my neighbour's house, sit in a room that they've never been in before, and tell them that Daddy had gone. And I would never...
That must have been so hard.
I'll just never forget, their faces. It was like they kind of looked at me like they knew, obviously, something had happened, but didn't quite actually comprehend what I had said. So, yeah, it was just a whirlwind of the morning, and that obviously version I've told you is literally the short version, because I could literally recall every single detail of that morning, what he was wearing, everything.
You do. Yeah, that's tough, isn't it? How old were your kids at the time?
So my eldest was 4 and my youngest was 2.
Okay. And do you think they understood what was going on? I mean, I guess that's another challenge in itself, right?
So I think in the beginning, my eldest especially, obviously because he saw Daddy with me, he was literally by my side when I pulled the curtain back. I think he was very matter of fact with how he explained it to people. So when he went back to school after the Easter holidays, he went straight to his teacher and said, "I've got a secret to tell you. I saw Daddy like this, 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 and this." And I mean, hats off to the school and his teachers, because they've just handled it amazingly. I just can't imagine how that felt for one of your students to come up to you and say things, as black and white as that. So it was like that for a while, and then obviously months and months passed, and it's like asking questions. I think my eldest especially has got to the point now where he's accepted he's not going to see Daddy again, which is a very mature way of thinking.
Yeah.
But asking questions like, why can't Daddy come back like God did?
Okay.
Jesus died on a cross and he came back to life. I mean, and how do you? I mean, we're not a religious family. I don't follow religion at all. But it was just these questions coming out of nowhere, and I was just, I don't know how to answer them. His nana turned around and said, "Well, this is the bloke that's meant to turn water into wine." So it was very much like trying to turn it into a bit more of a light-hearted thing rather than, So it's been a bit like that really in terms of my eldest. My youngest, honestly, if I'm going to be completely honest, he's just toddling along like normal. He obviously knows daddy's gone, but it's not at a point where he's asking any questions. He'll just state facts. So like, purple was my daddy's favourite colour. Like my daddy supported Liverpool, like facts about daddy rather than anything else.
Yeah, that's nice. That's really nice, that, isn't it? And it's really nice that your eldest actually asks questions because it's coming out of him. It's not suppressing it. And like, it must be nice to be able to, I know it's difficult, it's really difficult questions no matter what they are, but the fact that he's asking them is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he has struggled with anger. I think, I mean, as his parent, I really struggle with dealing with his anger because I know why he's so angry. Because I've been through that sort of phase of grief where I'm like, oh, why have you done this to us? Like, it's been very difficult from a parenting perspective.
And I imagine it's been difficult from a personal perspective because, you know, as you say, you've got a new partner and he was your ex, and I assume, and please correct me, but I assume that throws up its own weird feelings in that, you know, you kind of feel like, why do I feel so sad yet? Oh, but I did have a life with you still, and it's confusing, I guess.
It's confusing, but for me, it's pretty straight in thinking that, yes, things ended the way they did and we had our arguments. I've never ever said that he's been an angel in my life because he wasn't. He was irritating. He was annoying. I even said at his funeral to his dad. Yeah, and not just a bit, but it is really weird because obviously he's seen me birth two of his children. Like, he's a father to my children, and no matter how many disagreements and stuff, I would rather he'd be here arguing with me every day than not be here for the boy's sake. And I think one thing I've come to terms with as well is obviously the expectations of how others expect you to grieve. So, for example, my family and my friends know all of the little details that, you know, he used to annoy me with, or like it was pretty horrendous what, you know, how he treated me sometimes, like really horrendous. So they know all of that and they don't like him for that. So their opinion of him is completely negative. So they expect me to be grieving in like, oh well, he's gone.
That's made your life easier.
Yeah, he's gone. The problem's gone.
Yeah.
And
no,
actually,
but he's left a massive problem for you because you've got to go through the journey now with your sons and help them through it because of what he's done.
And I'll be honest, I really do miss him. Like, there is times where, you know, I would absolutely love to, you know, give him a call and just say, look, our eldest son was a bit of a brat today or something, like, because he's the only person on that level that will get it.
Yeah.
You know, and we had different parenting styles. You know, we were literally polar opposite people. It's really, really difficult to manage. And like, even I've got photos of him next to our TV. I've got like a photo collage frame thing. And obviously, what woman has pictures of her ex-partner up in her house?
You know, do go for the boys, don't you? You know,
it's for the children more than anything, because I just don't, not like, you know, I
totally understand that.
It's very weird.
That's been a good mum. That is just being a good mum. And I was actually talking to somebody the other day, and he's in his 50s now, and he lost his mum when he was 9-year-old, and then sadly his elder brother, who's a couple of years older than him, he died 2 years after. He's now in his 50s and still dealing with the grief, anxiety, depression, because he was never allowed to speak about his mum or his brother in the home. There was no pictures, there was no conversations, there were no, oh, mum would have liked this,
or let's reminisce that.
Let's reminisce. It wasn't allowed, and even now, it's still not. So to have those pictures there is absolutely massive. Just to talk about him, it's irrelevant what your relationship was with him now. That's over and done with, isn't it? And you deal with that in one section. You can't deal with it all at once, can you?
No,
Because
no.
it comes over, it's just too overpowering.
Yeah.
And just for them to have those pictures there and to make it a normal thing to talk about him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do it here where I'll give my son something, go and put that in Emily's bedroom. Emily still has a bedroom and I still use it, and it's just and he'll go, right, okay, there's no hesitation about going in the room, and it's making it sort of like normalizing our journey now, and that he has died, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's life.
Yeah,
He's died.
I think the important message in that is that that person, although they've left, they still have permanence in your life, and also it in a positive-ish perspective, I suppose, is that it will shape them. And I think any person that suffers a bereavement at any point in their life, it shapes you as a person.
It changes you.
I lost one of my best friends when I was 15, and that was a complete accidental death as well. So it was completely out of the blue. And I feel like having that experience at 15 has given me perspective on life throughout my adulthood and everything like that, because you just can't take things for granted. So I do think that keeping the person in your conversations and memories is a really crucial thing to being able to deal with it, because I wouldn't ever deny them of speaking about Daddy.
No, that's good. But then that kind of leads us also onto the work that you're now doing on the back of everything that's happened to raise that grief awareness and education for children. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the Seddon project?
The reason that I started the project, and I'll be completely honest, I'm a regular person, okay? I've recently become unemployed because I've had so much absence of work that I felt like a liability in my job, if I'm honest.
Grief does that to you, sadly.
And the guilt that surrounded me around working because I couldn't support the children, and then going to work but not being a support for my colleagues or all the students. I was just like... So I'm doing this project completely voluntarily and completely self-funded, although everything that I'm doing has been obviously the back of kindness of others as well. The project, because my children have had minimal support. When I say minimal support, there's only one woman in the whole of Northamptonshire in the child and adolescent bereavement service.
We're in Northamptonshire too, and my children are over 18 and there is nobody to support them.
Yeah.
It's shocking.
The bereavement, I think the age group thing is very concerning because, like you said, with young adults, is that they get referred to services such like Mind, which are absolutely brilliant in what they do. I think the whole age thing is really prominent as well, because primary school, they have pastoral workers, they have support workers, they have behaviour, they have SEN support. But in terms of any bereavement, it's all signposting. So, I mean, my son's school has been absolutely amazing, and, I've been sat down in meetings and they said, try this charity, try that charity. Then the most local charity that could help me was in Milton Keynes. And they held a group in Milton Keynes every Monday night. And I'm like, I can't drive to Milton Keynes on a Monday night with my 3-year-old who's going to fall asleep. And then it's like, you won't go to sleep till midnight. And I'm like, it's just the admin overload. So I noticed that there was a gap. And what I'm trying to do is just create a social space and that peer support, because I think one thing that's really, really crucial, especially with my son's situation, is the fact that he feels so excluded that none of his friends feel like he does. Like, we'll go to reading time at school and he'll be like, everyone's got a daddy but me. And it's feeling so isolated by the bereavement, that I just thought, I'll just bring everyone together. We'll just do something, a simple craft activity or something that I have obviously been inspired by these charities that are professionals, but just to bring everyone together in that space to talk about it, and as parents as well. So then I've got someone to rant to. I've kind of done myself a favour by, speaking to people, and then I haven't limited it to, obviously it has to be a parent that's died or, anything like that. So it's parents, grandparents, siblings, even pets. Because one thing that sticks in my mind is that when I spoke to my son's reception teacher, he said to me, a lot of children at this age will lose a pet before they lose a parent or anything like that. So, and understanding that sort of bereavement is so crucial to, if anything, like more means, I'm not saying pets aren't meaningful, because I absolutely love my cats, but, it's a preparation thing and opening the conversation. Yeah, and it's the isolation, I think.
Yeah, there's strength in numbers, isn't there?
Yeah.
And if you're in a group with other people that just get it, it makes life just that bit easier. If you're in a group where at 10 o'clock at night, you've just had a really shit day and you just want to message somebody to have a rant, you've got somebody to do it.
Yeah.
That person that you're going to rant to, or those people in that group, have so much more empathy, so much more understanding than any professional. And I'm sorry to any professionals listening, but they do.
No, but that goes for the same with the kids as well, because the ages like that your kids are, they're going to say things that other kids aren't going to understand, and they're not going to have had the experience of. So then to be in a group where they say something and they can see an understanding, and that the person that they're talking to, hasn't kind of looked at them or walked away thinking, well, that kid's a bit weird, because there is a connection there because they understand it. Just, kids need to be seen, don't they? And
kids
it just
need
really
to feel
helps
normal. Kids need, they're just like us. They want to feel normal and understood.
Yeah. Another thing of the around the isolated thing, when my son was in reception, and obviously it was the summer term, so it was after May half term, so it's probably about 1 or 2 months after his dad had died, and a parent actually complained to the teacher that my son's grief was rubbing off on her son, and his behaviour
what?
Yeah, and his behaviour had changed because of it. And this is why...
What?
Yeah, I know, this is why I'm so passionate about this, because I broke down. I literally had a breakdown after that, because I thought, how can people...
Where's that woman's compassion?
People don't understand. This is the thing. Another thing I think about grief as well is that people do not understand unless it's happened to them. And it doesn't have to be the same sort of grief or the same sort of situation, but unless you've had something so tragic and traumatic happen in your life, you do not understand.
No. And I think even if you've had a similar circumstance, like Karen and my children, my son's Bradley and Karen's daughter's Emily, they both had brain cancer. They both had exactly the same thing. They died 3 weeks apart. They went through a very similar journey. But I still can't tell you that I know exactly how Karen's feeling and vice versa,
No.
And our journeys were the same.
Yeah.
It's like...
I know. It's shocking.
When we speak, we've spoken to a number of children over the last few months that have lost people, and the thing that we get it's an overwhelming thing that comes across, that they want to talk, they want help, and they're quite open to it. They're so open to talk about death. I think the problem isn't necessarily the teachers. The teachers are probably scared of upsetting parents.
Yeah.
And if it becomes that it's on the curriculum, so it's got to be spoken about, parents are then sadly taken out of the equation.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, I remember when Emily started talking, she'd had sex education in primary school, and I'm thinking, why the hell are they talking about that this early? And I did have a rant. I remember having a rant. It wasn't much of one, but I thought, that's just a bit too much information, too young. Yeah, they can talk about that, but they can't talk about bereavement. Somebody's, most young children lose a grandparent or, like you say, a pet. Maybe not common.
But even on a lighter scale than that, you get bereavement and grief if you lose a friendship. You know, like if you just fall out with your friend, that's still a part of grief. You know, you've still lost something, and kids still have to understand those emotions.
It's giving them a life skill. It's helping them to see empathy, to look. So your friend, your son's friend, you need your friends. You need normality. You need to still just play. You need to still have fun and run around the playground. So just because he's lost his dad doesn't mean to say he's not still got all his other needs that he needs. He needs to run around. He needs to laugh. He needs to do everything, even more so.
But I just couldn't believe it, if I'm quite honest. I mean,
I'm intrigued to know, what damage did your son do to this other child emotionally?
Well, no, it wasn't actually damage. It's just it was mirroring behaviours. So she was explaining that her son was getting a bit more backchatty and had a bit more of an attitude and a bit more of not an anger problem as such, but was getting more angry and stuff like that. And how she knows that my son has been displaying those behaviours, I do not know. But also, obviously, they spent every day, all day together. So I think it was just a sort of a bit of mismatched maths, should we say, with her thinking, oh, grief, his emotions, my son's behaviour, boom, that must be why he's acting like that. Yeah, it's completely shocking. But as a parent as well, and obviously with my thoughts and feelings, I was just like, oh my God, how can someone do that? And the fact that this parent had approached me outside of the school, we were at the park, and told me that she'd complained to the school about it, my jaw dropped. I was like, what? That's just... I called the school and they called me in and said, we've had a conversation with that parent and we've explained to them that it's not your son's fault. And I was like, I know that. Can someone just be in shock with me about this? Because I just couldn't believe it.
Can somebody acknowledge how out of order this is? Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. So
blimey.
That contributes to his isolation, because I mean, obviously he is not aware of that situation. But say, for example, his friend, he didn't, but if his friend had gone back into school and said, Mummy said I can't play with you because your daddy died, or something like that. It's I can't imagine. I mean, that didn't happen, luckily, but it could have.
Oh, yeah. It probably does. Yeah. It probably happens every day somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why this education is so important, because if those parents had had a bit more of an understanding and an insight into what grief is back when they were, 14, 15, 16, and they could have grown up into an adult with a little bit more of an understanding of what somebody goes through and how to build resilience and, how to be empathetic with somebody and support somebody, they hopefully would have turned into a better adult.
I'm completely pro the grief education in schools. It's being debated on Monday in Parliament, actually.
Yes, it is.
At 4:30.
It is.
I've got my arm set to tune in.
Yes, it is as part of the King's new curriculum review and all of that. And that's just, it's so needed.
Yeah. In reception, there was another incident before his dad died where he came home and he'd drawn a picture of a rocket and an astronaut on the floor. And I was like, oh, what's this? And he went, oh, this is the astronaut that died because he fell out of a rocket. So obviously a bunch of us mums have gone up to his teacher and said, our sons have been drawing weird and saying weird things about dead astronauts and stuff like that. And his teacher held his hands up and he said, look, death's a part of life. I was teaching them about what had happened in that scenario, as in the rocket, because they were doing space thing. Death's a part of life, and some of these children will experience that in their early years. So that's why I've explained it the way I have. And obviously children drawing about it and talking about it with you at home means that they're trying to process that information. And I was like, and we were just like, oh, all right, okay. But that's not not even part of the curriculum. But there's obviously his teacher has thought outside the box there. But if it's on the curriculum, he wouldn't have to. Every child.
No, he wouldn't have to take that risk of alienating parents. I mean, we're doing a lot with grief education with teachers and wanting to go into schools and actually support children. Perhaps we need an education for parents as well.
Yeah.
Never
sounds
thought
like
of that.
Yeah.
No, it sounds like
You've
it.
opened it. You've given us even more work to do, Anne-Marie.
There you go. Sorry. Anything to help children in this way is just needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
You know?
very much needed.
And like I said, you don't know unless unfortunately you don't know there's a gap for this unless it happens to you. And I was just, you know, I mean, as an adult, I was offered, I don't know about you both, but I've been offered so much by different services, like, you know.
Nothing. I've been offered nothing. Bradley died 18 months ago tomorrow, and I've been offered nothing.
Wow, that shocks me. What about you, Karen?
I was offered through the hospice that helped care for Emily at home. I had a psychotherapist for so many weeks.
Well, I mean, I don't know whether that's because of the type of death. Maybe, I don't know, but still,
Maybe
that's still
the
not
trauma that was
I
involved.
do think there's more support out there for suicide,
Yeah.
you know, which is great. I'm not knocking that at all. It's great.
No.
There is a lot more support out there for suicide and for things like that. Child loss, it's a little bit of a thing people are a bit scared of. You know, child loss has this stigma of not only being grief and shit, and because it is, but it's also like child loss is the worst loss you can go through, and therefore it's it's the elite of the grief, and it's a little bit too difficult and a bit more scared of it.
Do you find that a lot of the child loss stuff is around like neonatal sort of, like the early ages now, or you don't think it's
not been given anything, Anne-Marie, to answer that question? I can't
believe that.
I've not been given anything to say to you it was about this. I've genuinely had anything, so I can't even say it was about this or it was about that. There was nothing.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a competition, is it? Of
no, but I didn't mean that to sound like that.
No, you didn't.
Not
every
at all.
death is traumatic, and it's like if somebody's lost a baby, they might think, somebody who's lost an older child might think, well, theirs was only a baby. They didn't get to spend 16 years with their baby.
Yeah.
They haven't grown all those things. We're missing them more. But the person who's lost a baby will think, yeah, but you had more than us. You had 16 years of your child. You know, like everybody is. It's every death is traumatic.
We were talking about this last week, weren't we? And I was saying that, you know, in that whole finding the silver linings, and a few people commented on that on last week's one. Like, I find myself sitting there a lot saying, well, at least Bradley was 18. At least I had Bradley for 18 years. Some people, you know, their babies die at a few days old or a few hours old or a few months old. You know, they don't get to watch their, you know, at least I got to see Bradley turn into an adult. And, you know, and it's that you do try. And I don't think it's not a competition thing. I don't do it. I do it because I think it just makes me reason with myself and kind of try and make myself appreciate what I had rather than focus on what I lost, because that's easier to deal with, I think.
Yeah, we all do that. I mean, I don't mean to be blunt now, Anne-Marie, but I will say it anyway. But as you're going through your life now, if you new partner, you may adopt the children, they'll have a family setting, and he might be a really, really good dad to the children, and they grow up, fully developed and have everything they could possibly, but they've still lost a dad. And that's the silver lining. There's chance for them to have something in life that's good going on forwards, but they've still got that grief inside them.
Yeah, it's still never enough, is it?
And it's funny you should say that about the comparison, because I have actually had a conversation, because I lost my granddad a month before Damien died, and I've had an argument with my own mum, because my mum's grief is completely different to mine. However, she's tried to relate. Bless her. She's tried to relate, and I've said, no, it's not the same, because Granddad's had 80 years on this world, whereas Damien was 31. and the boys have lost their dad, sort of thing. At least you've had your whole life with your dad, sort of thing. And do you know what? I felt terrible. I felt terrible for saying that, but I was angry because the perception of other people's grief is that we should all just remember that it's so unique to everybody. And it's not the same for one. Even if I was to meet someone whose ex-partner or partner died in the exact same circumstances, exact same time, or you know, as Damien, it would still be a complete different way of to me. Yeah, if that makes sense. So
but it's the first thing though. If you tell somebody that you have lost somebody, say it's not a friend or somebody close, it's the first thing that they'll say, oh no, you feel I lost my granddad or I lost my dad. And
then it's that the second question is then how long ago was it? And then it's that whole last year.
Oh, you must be over it now then.
Yeah. So for us it's still last year. So we still kind of get that okay. And for you it's still this year. So you're still getting the that's tough.
Or I get the you're doing really well for someone that's
and then you feel shitty for that, don't you?
And you're like if you could, like, from the outside obviously probably am, but you don't see the day-to-day things or the little things that trigger me off, like, you know, sometimes I'll just look out in the garden and my body like zones back to being in that,
I can imagine,
by those garden doors, and I'm like, that's just even just looking in my garden where it didn't even happen, or like little things, and like
that trauma's going to be with you for a long time, isn't it?
But it's just again, it's a perception of other people's opinions on how you should grieve or how they would personally grieve. I don't know, that infuriates me the most, I think, and I'm trying to get my head around that very much. And I suppose in the groups as well with the children, because the first group that I've launched is for primary and school age children, I really need to be sensitive towards the fact that these children are all going to be grieving differently. So there's going to be children that won't want to do arts and crafts or talk about anything, and then there will be people that will be all for it, and there'll be chatterboxes about everything, but every way's okay.
Can I just tell you, that is just the same as older people, as parents sitting around a table. You will get the parents, probably me, that won't shut up. And then you'll get the parents who will just sit and cry, or the parents will say the odd thing. So the children are just like us, really. But I do think they're more adaptable. I think
they're more resilient.
Yeah, they're more resilient than we think. I think
it's fantastic. So what sort of settings are you doing these groups together when you can get the children together?
So I've only so at the moment I'm obviously really, really early stages. So I've got there's a new cafe that's opened in Wellingborough, and it's called My Happy Play Cafe. So that's the first venue, and Natasha, who owns the cafe, has been absolutely incredible. She's opening the space for us for free after hours. She let me choose a day, and she said, look, let's just see how it goes. And it's basically like a cafe. It's got a sensory area, it's got a little play area, it's got a role play area, books, and then tables and chairs to do arts and crafts activities, which is like right up my street. So but that's happening on the 17th of December, the first one, for 3 to 10-year-olds.
Okay, so anybody with a 3 to 10-year-old that, you know, sadly experiencing grief and bereavement, doesn't matter what stage of grief or bereavement, can belong to the My Happy Place Cafe in Wellingborough.
And the long-term goal is obviously to absolutely, you know, expand and, you know, venture into the sort of parenting bereaved children, and then hopefully visiting schools and places in people's homes. Because obviously, I don't know about you guys, but obviously I was at home for a lot of time after, like in the sort of 2-3 weeks after, obviously, other than popping out to the school run and stuff. But just to have somebody there would have been nice, just to talk to, or
Just have a brew and a slice of cake.
Yeah, and then support in the terms of when the kids got home from school, somebody else cooking dinner. Because from my perspective, I went from a 50% parent, and as much as I love my children, it was great because we had a week on, week off, to being 100%, and
and your grief on top of that, and their grief on top of that.
Yeah. So just someone there, just someone else to cook the dinner, someone else to do them, like put them to bed, read them a story or whatever. That practical support that you don't get afterwards. I think.
Yeah.
That's the goal, really. I just obviously, at the moment with my situation, it's just completely. Also, I'm not a professional.
I don't think there is a professional when it comes to grief. I think the only professional you need to be when it comes to grief is you need to be grieving. I don't know how you can teach somebody this kind of stuff, really.
Yeah. I agree with that because a lot of the resources that I've got are very generic. Like you'll read through them and you'll think, that applies to me, and that doesn't apply to me, or whatever. It's very generically written. So it's like
it's that whole 5 stages of grief. There is not 5 stages of grief. You do not start at one point and end at another, and you do not get to acceptance at whatever point and suddenly go, I accept this, and that's it, I'm done, grief completed. I mean, Karen and I were having this discussion when I was driving home from work the other day. I was having a rant in the car and saying that I'd done the whole 5 stages in the space of an hour on repeat throughout the day, I'd dipped in and out of them all. And probably during that conversation while I was ranting to you as well,
But I think you can have 105. 105 stages in the first hour of waking.
I know. They called it puddle jumping. I don't know if you've heard that. So it's the same for everyone. I mean, when I watched the animation on puddle jumping that Child Bereavement did, I was like, that's me. Let alone the children. Like you said, it's no way a set way to go.
No, because grief is hard work, and it's hard work for adults too, and it's heavy and it's too much. And Karen and I say it all the time. We live in denial more than we live in reality because denial is the easier place to be. And that mirrors that whole puddle jumping. For people who are listening that don't understand, the whole puddle jumping is kids jump in and out of their grief. So the puddle is their grief and they jump in it when they're ready to be able to cope with it, and then they jump out of it, when it gets too heavy. And kids are very much that if a kid is asking you questions around death or grief or anything, then they are emotionally in a standpoint place to be able to deal with that, because kids don't ask those questions if they can't cope with the answer. And as soon as it becomes too much, normally kids are quite good at shutting the conversation down and saying, don't want to talk about this anymore. And they're usually as blunt as that, as saying, okay, finish now, let's move on to the next thing. They're very good at being able to control the level of the emotions that they can contend with at any time. And it's us as adults that through societal meanings, and somehow we've all lost that ability to say, no thanks, don't talk about that anymore. But grief kind of gives you that back a little bit, I find.
Yeah, it does. It does. You say, well, stop. I don't discuss that. Stop. I'm not having Christmas this year. Stop. I'm not doing this. It does. As bad as it is, I think grief does give you some power. And like we've said right at the beginning, it changes you.
And
but
not
I hate
always
that too. For the best, not always for the worst. Yeah,
it's not. But I do hate to admit that. I do not want anything good to come out of Bradley's death. But sadly, good things are coming out of it, and that
is me. You've met me.
Yeah. Well, I wish I hadn't.
No, I know. I wish I'd never even heard your voice.
I know. But I just, I do hate that I do have to accept that some good things have come from it. And it's a real sort of, what's that horrible word I can never pronounce? It's that juxtaposition, isn't it? That, you're in two places at once, and it's a really difficult thing.
Well, if it keeps you going, Anne-Marie, now with all what you're doing, it will get you through some very, very difficult.
I just got to a point where I was like, right, I'm going to do something about this. And I've always been quite like that. I've been very sort of,
that's good.
If I believe in something, I'll help the cause, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
The whole grief education thing, I just think it's just so prominent in the fact that it will help in the long term. So secondary schools, because I've worked in a secondary school, and the amount of pressure that support staff are under for mental health issues, for additional needs, for behavioural issues is just off the scale. And some of it, not all of it, comes down to a traumatic event in that child's experience. So an adverse child's experience.
It does. Karen and I went to a schools and academies show last week before, and we were listening to a lot of educational speakers in that space, all talking about how kids nowadays, this generation of children, secondary school children we've got going through school at the moment, are probably one of the most educated that we have, but they are one of the least thriving population generation of children that we have, because they are being looked at from an educational standpoint, and that things have come on so much in that kids are learning, but kids are just not thriving because we are not looking at kids holistically. We are not taking their well-being into account, their environment into account, all those socio-economic stuff that all goes into it that helps build up a children. Like they were saying, look back years ago to kids, and they had working men's clubs and churches, and your neighbours and the farmers, and everybody was all a massive, that whole saying, it takes a village, because it really did used to take a village. And those villages have turned into sort of singular one-man households sort of things, where everybody's isolated into a household, everything's done online, people don't have those wider community sort of gatherings and social connections that they used to have. And that is actually affecting children, because not every child has a home life where it's comfortable, it's safe, or they want to talk to who's at home, but they don't have anybody outside of that anymore to be able to talk to. And schools are no longer providing that social sort of emotional care that I mean, when I was at school, we used to have the vicar come into school and all sorts of stuff. Like, those, you had your school nurses. Do you know what I mean? Like,
the nurse, didn't you?
Yeah, the dinner ladies, the receptionist. They were all kind of, sort of, unpaid therapists for children, if you like, or a kind of a mother figure. But you don't seem to have that anymore.
That's how I felt in my last job, actually, because I was I was lead first aid. So basically, the not qualified, underpaid school nurse. I was dealing with self-harm injuries, and then obviously having to ask questions like, "Do you have any sort of thought?" After coming back from my ex-partner's suicide, having these conversations. I'm like, I can't. This is way out of my pay
grade. Too much.
Yeah. And your mind, I suppose, goes overdrive. Like, we were just having a chat before you joined just now, like, how when you're ill, I think I said on last week's podcast, my husband's not been very well. But the way that your mind goes then at 100 miles an hour and associates that to everything that you've been through, he's been having headaches and stuff. And so in his mind now, he's instantly got a brain tumour and he's going to die like Bradley did. And, and then the kids hear that dad's not very well, and they instantly panic that dad's got cancer and is going to die like Bradley did, And I can imagine that having a job that relates to, especially how, even if Damien wasn't the father of your children or your ex-partner, he's still... It's still a situation where you found somebody in that situation that you can never unsee.
No.
The fact that you once loved the guy and he played a part in your life just amplifies that. That's still horrific in any way, I think.
Yeah, I think even if it was a stranger, it would affect me, because that's my nature anyway.
I think it just would have done anybody. I think you've got to be a stone cold person for that not to, to affect you. I used to work in the police years ago, and I know that police officers, when they go to these things, they go to these things because it's their job, but it affects them.
Well,
you're not trained to be able to walk in there and not feel sad.
The police officer that went to pick his mum up after I'd phoned her and told her, and again, that's another horrific experience I'd never wish to ever have ever again. The police officer that picked her up was his third week on the job, and it was his third suicide. And you're just thinking, like, at what point do you say enough's enough? Like, enough's enough, really. Honestly, I don't think it's around the stigma of men not talking anymore. I think it's the fact that it's so obviously through the inquest process, the police commented and said that they didn't section him because they felt that he was a well-minded, sensible person that wouldn't put his life at risk, basically, because, you know, he had a house, he had a really good job, like, and you just think, I do think
he was
that
functioning.
I just think that it's not around the stigma anymore. I think it's the assumption of what people can see on the outside as being okay, and and then obviously because I feel like it would take an outsider to notice that you're not okay. So something's got to give, and I just don't know what, really. You know, and you wish you could just like flick a switch. It's the same with, you know, like a lot of my past employment has been with like on dementia units, and you know, you just think, why isn't there a cure for this yet? Or why isn't, you know, why? Yeah, you just question the whole world, don't you, when something like this happens? And I'm very angry at the world as well, very angry.
Yeah,
I get them. And Damien unfortunately had a really bad childhood. So again, it comes through to the education and the early help to be able to go through your life dealing with anything that's happened.
Yeah, to break the cycle.
Yeah, to break the cycle. And I think that's where this whole, you know, curriculum thing's going to come in, I think.
Hopefully. Well, I think that's absolutely amazing. And Karen and I are totally on board. Like I say, we've got our own sort of things, a bit different to what you're doing going on, but we wholeheartedly support you. So if you need anything from us, just let us know.
Well, thank
you.
I
think that's a great place to sort of end today's podcast and say thank you so much for coming on. I genuinely could sit here and talk to you all day, and so could Karen, because this is what Karen and I talk about all day.
You're so easy to talk to as well, so thank you. Like it's been a very comfortable experience.
Thank you. Have we? Are you another person that we've taken your first podcast virginity? We do that a lot somehow.
Yeah, you have actually. Wow.
Oh wow, we're honoured. We're honoured. We're racking them up. Is it a tally?
I need to put on my CV.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Grab yourself a cuppa, find a comfortable spot, and we'll journey through grief together. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody.